The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait in which a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of other people's actions, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. So the victim mentality requires a projection of blame rather than a reflection of blame.
Hey guys, before we get started, I have a quick favor to ask. Can you please hit the subscribe button so that you can help more people find the show? Thank you. Kyle, welcome to Give Yourself Some Leeway. I just want to start off with what you gave me as your bio was as a clarity consultant and developer of Neuro Linguistic Somatic experience on a mission to defeat the victim mentality through a practical mindset coaching system for people who want to defeat negative narratives and empower themselves to take action, become more in control of their life, and optimize their well-being. That's one hell of a mouthful in that. What inspired you to do all of this?
I turned my problems into my passions. So for more context, I did not like the character I was in 2016 or the character that I've built up. And there was a point where it was just a clean slate. Everything was out in the open. There was no hiding, no lying, nothing. And it was just open. So at that point, I made the decision that I wanted to make a shift, that I wanted to make a pivot. And if, like many folks, made a help me out post. And that post got a lot of love. There was, or in the post, I said that I apologize for the folks that I hurt in those last couple of days and that I wanted to make a shift and I was open to mentors, therapists, words of wisdom. I was not picky with my advice. I was like, give it to me. And I still have it saved on my computer because it was on January 1st or January 2nd of 2016. And now with between 2016 and now 225, I believe that I could go back in time and help the person that made that post. So problems literally became my passions. So now I help folks that are struggling.
What you said there was that you said what many people do is reach out. You made a post that said, help me out. I don't think that's the case. I think it's a very rare few who would post that. And that's part of the problem that we see nowadays, that many people don't reach out. They don't know how to reach out. They don't know who to reach out to. So what you did right there was a very strong, vulnerable moment to have, especially to reach out online to look for that help.
You know, not with you saying that, because before we were chatting, I was having quite the reflection vibe, and so now it's still lingering there. With that, something that I would have characterized myself as is resisting help or wanting to solve the problem by myself, or I could do this on my own. And I'm really glad that you said that, because I think where I was thinking where people would go to Facebook for help and then that would be about it. But yeah, it would have been counter character to who I was embodying at that point in time. Oof, I'm gonna write about that later. Thank you, dude.
Yeah, because I resonate with that myself as well. Part of my burnout recovery was me trying to do everything myself. I wasn't going to reach out for help because I didn't want people to see the weaker side of me. I didn't want to be seen as vulnerable or needing support or needing help. I needed to be strong and independent. So everything was straight to Dr. Google or straight to YouTube, or it was what are the best ways to recover from burnout. I got a list of 50 things and I was like, right, I'm going to do all 50 things and recover in record speed. And that didn't work for me. It took me a lot of trial and error to actually admit to myself, a lot of self reflection. I need to get help with this. I don't know what I'm doing. Surely there's someone else out there who can at least guide me in the right direction. And I got therapy, I got counseling, and that was a big first step for me, admitting that I can't do this on my own. And
Mhm.
what I'm trying to do on my own, I'm obviously not doing it right because it's not working.
Mm,
And being able to just say, I need help with this. I need to
totally.
seek professional help moving forward. I need to be able to find a way to reach out to friends also, friends
Mm,
that I otherwise would never reach out to. I was always there to support them, but I never
mhm,
asked them for support. And once I did reach out and got over that fear of reaching out for support, it strengthened the friendship. It
mm,
strengthened the bond with those people because
mhm,
no longer was I the guy who was saying, oh, no, I don't need anything, but you can always come to me. They felt that they could reach out to me because we had strengthened that connection. They knew I could reciprocate and reach out to them. They can reach out to me. There was more
mhm.
trust. There was more support. There was a stronger bond in those friendships. And that was something that
It opened up a loop of abundance.
exactly, it opened up that loop of abundance and reciprocation, because, or reciprocity is, I suppose, the right word. It was, I had the fear that, oh, if they think I'm needy, then they will leave me. Whereas it was the
Mm,
exact opposite. It was, oh, they know that I can reach out to them for help, and I'm also willing to help them.
totally. Totally. There's some things that popped up when you were saying that was, well, the first thing was the abundance loop. It because it is the way I think of it is the very thing that we are desiring is the very thing we are not giving or projecting. So having that loop open is like sweet spot. And another thing too, where it was an admitting, for me, I think it's less about admitting it because I think that there's in what it feels like, what the word admitting brings to me is a not a sense of defeat, not disappointment. I think it challenges for me, yeah, I'm going with just how I feel on this one. It's like a challenge of competence. And I think that I translate admitting to coming to terms with, because then I think it feels to me more collaborative, where we're giving ourselves some leeway.
Yeah, in terms of the words that I use, and let's say, like as you said, admitting, I'm comfortable with that because it means I'm being vulnerable with myself. It's
Mhm.
like
True,
admitting to
true.
something means that, okay, I've been holding back on something, or I've been holding up a facade, and by finally admitting it, I'm letting it out there. And it's kind of like
Mm,
admitting to
I
being
like.
wrong. And you always feel, oh, if I admit to being wrong, people are going to judge me. No one's going to respect my opinion or my authority anymore. But if you don't admit to being wrong when you're wrong, or admitting that you made a mistake, or admitting to the failure, then
Mhm,
you're holding up this mask that you might think that, oh, as long as I hold up this mask, no one will see it through me.
yep,
Whereas other people can see through that mask, and they're like, he's really not being true to himself, or he's really trying to hold up this facade, and
yep.
it really doesn't suit him. As soon as you're comfortable to break that facade and be like, this is how I show up, I'll admit to
Mhm,
my mistakes and learn from them.
mhm,
Like even for me, like things that I might have said in the podcast 3 years ago, views that I had back then. Someone will go, "Oh, you said this thing 3 years ago. Do you still believe in that?" And I'm like, "No, that was me 3 years ago. I mean,
mhm.
it's still out there. The 3 years, the me 3 years ago still exists on the internet, but that doesn't
Yeah,
mean that it reflects my experience now.
totally.
But if I was to try and cover up and say like, oh, 100%, that's exactly how I think, and if someone tries to prove me wrong or saying that I'm contradicting myself, and if I keep on trying to build up this wall and say, no, 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 stop questioning me,
Mhm,
then that creates discrepancy and incongruency in my
Mm,
authenticity. So being
mhm.
able to admit that I have changed rather than trying to hold up that facade is a way of me being vulnerable and being more aligned with myself, aligned with my values. So
Beautiful.
that I guess this plays into you using, let's say, soft and solid words, where you might
Mhm,
say, let's say, word, because the power of words, the words that we use, the words in our narrative,
mhm,
reflect how we show up in life, our actions, our behaviors, our thoughts, our feelings.
mhm.
Every part of us can be reflected so clearly in the words that we use.
Totally, dude. Without a doubt. Yeah, soft talk and solid talk, or so many parts. I'll go with the soft talk, solid talk. So what that is a way to remove, well, to have clarity around what we're truly saying. So soft talk is uncertain, unclear, ambiguous words, and solid talk is certain, clear, and concise. And an example of soft talk is I might make it to the party for 5 p.m. I could make it to the party for 5 p.m. I should make it to the party for 5 p.m. I'm probably going to make it to the party for 5 p.m. I think I'm going to be at the party for 5 p.m. And so if a statement can be followed up with a question, the statement is not said solid enough. So when we remove the soft talk words, the probablys, mights, thinks, coulds, maybes, shoulds, I try, I might, uh, then we have a statement. It's either I'm going to make it to the party for 5 p.m., I'm not making it to the party for 5 p.m., or I'm undecided, I'll let you know. And so what this exercise does is that it shows us where we're indecisive. And when we have ambiguous, unclear narratives that are floating around in our mind, if we're saying probably to someone else, oh, I'm probably going to accomplish my goals, then we're likely going to say it to ourselves. And that puts us in a place where our internal dialogue, our words, our stories are harming us rather than helping us. So words are the ethereal macronutrients of the mind, man.
So having those soft words or those soft sentences, the all those uncertainties and indecisions, uh,
Mm-hmm.
it plays into, let's say, how we express ourselves in terms of the promises that we make to other people and also the promises that we make to ourselves. So if you bring that instead, let's say, promising to a friend whether you're going to go to the party or not, where, oh, I might go, I'll probably go. It's the same internally. It's like the commitments you make to yourself. Oh, I might
Yep.
go to the gym. Oh, I probably I could or I should wake up at 7 a.m. But by not being definite, your mind is like, oh, you should wake up, or you could hit snooze, and so you're creating these indecisive pathways in your brain. Whereas if you're definite and you're saying, I'm waking up at 5 a.m. because I want to do this, or I choose to do this at 5 a.m. and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to feel good about it. If you're
Mm-hmm.
that decisive or and concrete with the decisions that you make, then your brain is going to be like, okay, we're waking up at 5 a.m.
It's
It
also
makes
okay.
the system, the discipline makes it easier because your mind is
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, you're not creating multiple options and pathways of indecisiveness here.
Mm-hmm.
You're making it very clear what your decision is, how you're
Totally.
taking ownership of this of what choices you want to make for the day.
Totally. And to piggyback on that one too, because I don't think it's the specific decision, it is the lack of commitment to the decision. So even if someone woke up and was thinking, uh, I'm gonna wake up and go to the gym, or my options are to wake up and go to the gym or to sleep in for another hour. Let's say they got that. Yeah, that would make sense. People, if we're still hanging out in that indecisiveness where we're committing to the, if there's an indecision there where it's going to be that conflict of wanting to get up and wanting to stay asleep, And when we commit to the decision of even staying asleep, we'll be able to alleviate that the conflict. Unless it persists long enough, I think it's a decision period because the soft talk, even if someone's just allowing them to sleep themselves in while working themselves up for not being up, that's ambiguity. That's, do you want to do this or that? And by making a decision, we'd be able to alleviate it entirely.
And I feel that for me, especially having that too many decisions in my day just creates decision fatigue, mental fatigue,
Totally.
and it just drains me. So
Mhm.
the more things that I get decisive on the day before and having like disciplined systems and blocks for what I'm going to do the next day, I don't have to think as much. I was like, oh, well,
Mhm.
this is happening from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. This is happening from 10 a.m. to 12. And these are my blocks in between where I'm taking time for myself. They're
Mhm.
I've gamified it in a way where um I have my blocks which are non-negotiables. I have my wins. I have my side quests. I have my bonuses. So that's just how my head works at the moment. And it's like I'm living in Skyrim in a way. And it's like,
Totally.
but it's
E-
obviously not the same. But I'm gamifying or I'm blocking out things I want to do in my day in a gamified way. So
mhm.
one thing I have that I use are wins, and I keep them simple. But let's say it's a quest that I need to do, and if I repeat that quest throughout the day, then that's bonus. That's bonus XP for me. So one of them
Yeah.
is waking up in the morning, and the first thing I do when I see my reflection is I smile. I smile to my reflection. I start my day with a smile, and I'm
Mhm.
also starting my day with someone smiling back at me. My reflection, straight up, two smiles. I've given a smile, I've received a smile. If I decide to smile any other time during the day, it could be my own reflection again. It could be my partner, it could be the dog, it could be a work colleague. And if they choose to smile back at me, more bonus smiles. I've
Mhm.
already started that momentum by getting that win early in the day. Next could be a
Totally.
glass of water. I start my day with a glass of water. That's my win. If I decide to have any more glasses of water, I can stack upon up. I can stack up on that and be like, okay, bonus glasses of water. I started off my day hydrating my brain, thinking clearly. Every other decision I'm going to make today is going to be clearer because I have a hydrated brain, I have a
Mhm.
hydrated body. And it's again stacking up those small wins throughout my day. It's how I
Totally.
build momentum.
Mm. Uh, Something that adds that to with the soft talk, solid talk part, the thing that happens as a side effect of clarifying and speaking more solid to ourselves and to others is that it puts us in a position of what I like to call microdosing decision making. So what you're doing is you're microdosing your decision making, and it's because they seemingly small, like little bits, but that compound effect where you're accumulating all your bonus XP at the end of the day. Yeah, that's a all series of decisions that are popped up in there. And so what I see, what I've experienced with this one as well, is when we start to speak with more solidity or to solidify our speaking, there we go. Uh, we develop competence in our decision making, which as a side effect encourages our confidence. So the side effect of competence is confidence. And I also believe that a side effect of competence before confidence is self-respect. And I think when those are stacking, it becomes it can become a very different life in a very short period of time.
And what I feel about stacking all of this bonus XP is that the XP is very like malleable that you can decide it's not something that's very concrete. It's like, okay, if I'm smiling today, it's only going to brighten up my day, or it might just be positive psychology for me. It's not going to affect anything else. And it's like, no, you have the choice. You're building up all of these bonus XP points, and then at the end of the day, you can decide, okay, which skill set do I want to put these towards? And just they're like,
Mhm.
okay, I've been smiling. I'm a lot more competent at smiling. I like my smile now because it just comes naturally to me. And then it's like, okay, this might help my charisma, might help my confidence, it might help my public speaking skills, might just help it might just help me in terms of building relationships with others, that I seem more warm and welcoming, I'm more approachable. And you get to decide, okay, I'm building up all these extra skill points, I can decide which category I want to upskill in. Not
Totally.
not saying, okay, if I'm smiling, that's only upgrading my smiling skill. It doesn't affect anything else. It's kind of a multifaceted skill or multifaceted win for the day. That it's
Totally.
you're stacking up habits, but they don't just affect one thing. It affects
Mhm.
multiple things, multiple categories in your life.
Totally. I like that. Man, and your Gameify talk, freaking love it. It very much resonates with me on that one too. Because it makes it a lot simpler where because this is a reflection I had about 2 weeks ago, and it was visual or becoming more specific with the skills that I want to put the XP points to. So right now, my focused skill, where in Skyrim there's three different categories and there's six six skills per. I believe it's six. It could be nine. Uh, and how each of those sub ones have, so one I have is for communication, and then those sub ones are writing. So similar how archery has, you can eventually level up to using the two arrows instead of one. So I'm working towards that specific skill set and having that gamified approach where it's still putting in the time to develop the XP to get the skill set to get the outcome or the objective or the magical tool that's going to make all the other parts of your battles and journeys easier. That's cool. I like it. And I think that gamification is key, man.
It always brings, like, one thing I always bring it back to is the life lessons that Pokemon taught me as a 5 year old and as a 7 year old. It's like, if you had the patience to grind out on Pokemon when the original with red, with blue, with yellow, then you know how much patience it takes to get to Indigo Plateau.
Mhm.
You have to go through all of the battles, all the turn-based battles, grinding, leveling up, getting all your HMs, uh, being able to cut down the trees, being able to get flash and go through the caves. You need to go through all of these steps, and you have to grind through all the leveling up of each Pokemon, different skill sets, and finally getting your team to Indigo Plateau. But
Mhm.
when you start off in Pallet Town, there's no way you could face Indigo Plateau. There's no way. You need to skill up in order to get there, and it's all part of the journey. Okay, this is a set out journey for me, but I know I'm going to have to do lots of turn based battles in order to get there. And they're the
Mhm.
reps, they're the skills that you're building along the way. And same as with anything that we do in life, it's like, oh, I want to be a 7 figure entrepreneur. I want to be a top line manager. I want to be a CFO. And it's like, okay, but there are certain skill sets that you're going to need to develop to get there. It's not always going to be a piece of paper. There are different there are other skill sets, interpersonal skills that you need to build along the way. You need to become
Mhm.
more aware of yourself along the way
Mhm.
as well, because how you show up for yourself reflects how you show up for everyone else.
Totally.
And you can't show up for everyone else if you're not taking care of yourself first.
Mhm.
So it's the same as if you're trying to build your team of Pokemon, but you're not taking care of yourself along the way, or not taking care. Let's say you're only using your Charizard and getting through. And next thing is like, but Charizard isn't suitable for half the bosses, especially when you get into the water boss. And next thing you're like, or the water leader, and next thing you're like, okay, I might need to skill up grass or electric here. And
Yeah.
I could so totally. I just start talking about Pokemon on the
Dude,
podcast more. I really should.
bro,
I love using
honestly,
my
I'm actually
Pokemon
gonna
analogies.
say, I just gotta say, dude, you're hitting like my inner child's like, I don't talk like inner child. Actually, I talk about it quite a bit, but you're hitting that like my adult self and my kid self, I'm connecting with what you're saying. And dude, it's probably the most about Pokemon I've talked or I've heard someone or had a conversation with so much Pokemon. I'm freaking loving it, dude. I love it.
If my parents knew that Pokemon had such a deep impact on my life and how I gamify and upskill in my 30s, um, then they'd be like they'd be just shaking their heads, being like, Eugene has some serious notions if he thinks that Pokemon has played such a major role in his life. And I'm like, no, Pokemon and Kingdom Hearts have played a major
Oh, that's
role in
funny.
everything I do.
That is
That's
awesome.
that's the secret to my life.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's cool, man. It's cool. Hmm. Where was I thinking with that one? There was a, oh man, now you got me just thinking on Pokemon and all the couple other things where I was like, I think video games where I you know what, we'll talk on this one. I think that I learned how to develop my character based off of Skyrim alone. Like so much of that game, I put hours in. I had like six houses. It was pretty wild. And it's crazy how this is the main lesson I actually take away from Skyrim, and I was telling Kendra about it. It's how in a video game, in RPG, or I'll stick with Skyrim. For Skyrim, it was time is still allocated to putting in the work to accomplish the objectives. I theorize that because we can gamify real life, as you and I are both examples of, clearly. And with that, it's the it's the adjustment in time that's the struggle. Because we in a game we can accomplish so much in such a short period of time that we take that same expectation and apply it to real life timelines, and it doesn't fit as well. So I think that that's the main thing that I learned from video games is extending the period of time to be able to accomplish the thing. And fast travel is not a thing, so make sure you have transportation.
That's where I always come back to Pokemon. It's like not until you learn to teleport and fly, everything is just like, oh, you're grinding. Until you get that bicycle, you're still walking, and they only really had that in the original games. Like the newer ones that they had in Switch. I remember playing like Pokemon Sword, and it's like, oh wow, they just made this too easy. People don't understand the challenge it was grinding through those first few levels anymore, and
Hmm.
or walking everywhere, and or having all these blocks of bushes, and not having flat, having dark caves and things like that, or not being able to surf, not being able to cross a body of water, and the skills that you need to develop in order to get there, the challenges that you're going to face. You're going to faint, you're going to lose all that progress. You're playing on a Game Boy with two AA batteries, and you're watching that red light flicker, wondering if you're going to get through this battle and save the game or not. And all of these things you need to take into consideration. And even when that happens, that's in real life. That's a good comparison for when you need to rest, when you need to recharge, and when you need to sleep, when you need to take a break from the
Mm.
progress in the game. You cannot be
Hmm.
progressing 24 hours a day.
Hmm.
24 hours of game time doesn't happen in a 24-hour day. 24 hours of game time might happen over the course of a month, depending on how lenient your parents were with you playing the Game Boy. Um, but for me, it's like in terms of me wanting to get that progress, okay, this is not 24 hours of stray progress in one day. This could be split out over 6 months, could be split out over a year.
Hmm.
And it's about helping people to set those expectations of what they can achieve in a certain amount of time. Yes, dream big, but also have a healthy expectation of what your capacity is now. Your
Hmm.
capacity as you progress might be greater once you have more competence, once you have built those skill sets. But when you're starting out, once you're past tutorials, it's going to take a bit of grinding through those skills in order to be fully competent in that skill set. Before you go
Hmm.
from, as you said, going from one arrow to two arrows, you need to be fully competent with, okay, I'm just going to have to use this one arrow for a while. It might take a little longer, might do a lot less damage, but I'm going to have to get competent at this, get more skilled at
Mhm.
this, try experiment with different things, different skill sets, in or different actions, or taking a step back, dodging a little bit more in order to get to that level. Maybe, you know, um, trying different things and failing, and okay, then going back to a spawn point and then trying again. Okay, that didn't work. That's okay. That may have been a failure, but it's okay. I learned from it now going forward. I think the problem is that people have a fear of the failure, and then they just don't take that step forward. And they'll say, you know what, I'll just stick with the one arrow. I'll stick with the one arrow skill. Probably won't use it. I'll stick with a club or a sword. I'm not going to go down the range attacks. You know, I'll stick with what's in my comfort zone right now. I should just do a gaming episode. I really should. I
Dude,
should just really
honestly,
work on all these gaming analogies.
I had just had the thought of like it would be hilarious if we were able to take this podcast with the video game references, developing our characters and the progression of like things that we've been able to accomplish since the 90s. Imagine taking this episode, sending it back to the 90s, showing your parents or showing most adults, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, their brains didn't rot completely." Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, this is just me like going to my parents now. This is the only reason I jumped in this episode to be like, "Hey, mom, this is why I played Game Boy for so long, all
Yeah.
those years. This is what it did for me."
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, it's good.
Getting back to again, you probably still staying on topic is you have your abracadabra, your magic, and your
Mm.
spells.
Mhm.
So, what does that have to do with what you do? Is this all part of your NLSE, your
Yeah,
neuro linguistic somatic experience?
absolutely. It's in the L specifically, linguistic. Abracadabra is, well, when I say abracadabra, what do you think of? I already have an inkling of what it could be.
Abracadabra, alakazam.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So abracadabra is it's a old language, it's Aramaic. It's about 3,000 years old. And abracadabra translated to English is with my words I create. And if we look at the definition of a spell, it's a word or collection of words of great influence. So with our words, we create with great influence. We spell our stories out, our internal dialogue, our stories. And whatever we direct with our stories is going to inevitably be what we get as our reward. Or there's one uh, something Fry, Stephen Fry, I believe his name is. He had an interesting thing where he said, if all you want to be or if all you want to do is nothing, then that is your reward. If you want to be a judge, a grocer, uh, if you want to live what some might call the creative life, then that is inevitably what you will get as well. And I definitely butchered chunks of that. That's paraphrased for sure. However, the idea of it is in either direction, whatever that internal dialogue is, it's going to be our reward or our failure. And by being mindful of the words that we speak into existence, it becomes a lot, well, it creates the reality in our perceptions and how we frame the reality around us. And that's how it's the magic of words.
What you just said about Stephen Fry right there reminds me of do you know the poem "My Wage" by Jesse B. Rittenhouse?
No, let's hear
Okay,
it.
so this is something. Definitely online what you just said about the Stephen Fry quote. So the poem's called "My Wage," and it's I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening, when I counted my scanty store. For
Mhm.
life is a just employer. He gives you what you ask. But once you have set the wages, why, you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire, only to learn, dismayed, that any wage I asked of life, life would have willingly paid.
Yeah. Yes. Dude, I like that. I'm gonna
No, yeah, I'll
I like
definitely I'll
the
put that in the
whole
show notes
poem
as
there.
well, because
Hmm.
it's such an insightful poem that whatever, it's kind of like you get what you settle for in a
Yes.
way, but also knowing that whatever makes you happy, yes, life will give you that as your reward as long as you strive for it.
Hmm.
And yes, it's a journey to get there. As long as you stay on that path, you will achieve it. But if you venture off that path or waver a bit and be like, you know what, I'm just going to settle for what I have now, or you know what, I'm not going to pursue that anymore. I'm just going to take the easy route. Well, that's your reward if you take that, and you have to. If you're going to settle for something, then life's going to let you settle for that. But it's your choice how far down that path you want to go.
Hmm. Totally. Totally. Man, I'm so pumped that you found that poem. That's gorgeous. I freaking love that. Yeah, words, man. They can inspire, they can discourage. And going with what I was saying earlier, with words being the ethereal macronutrients of the mind, with for more context, because some folks may not know what a macronutrient is. Macronutrients are the building blocks of our body, fats, carbs, and proteins. The quality of those macronutrients will influence the quality of our body. How words are the ethereal macronutrients of the mind is that the quality of our words is going to influence the quality of our life. And if we feed our mind, or the quality of the mind, if we feed our mind quality words, we're going to have quality thoughts. And if we feed our mind shit words, we're going to have shit thoughts. And well, both have their rewards.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to, let's say, changing your, like, your environment. If you're not happy with where you are, you change your environment, and part of that is the words that you consume. Oh my god. Okay. Uh, if you caught any of that, it was so my alarm is dearly beloved from Kingdom Hearts as well. So true gamer. Um, that's what I wake up to every morning, and also have my nighttime routine as well. It's like,
What?
yeah, dearly beloved is just my. So like I used to have like really annoying alarm ringtones,
Mhm.
and my partner used to always be like, "Do you ever turn off that alarm?" Next thing, like, right, I'm going to come up with one that will not annoy you. So her alarm tone is like the Shire theme music from Lord of the Rings, and mine is Dearly Beloved, which from Kingdom Hearts 1, just that intro, that main menu music. And I'm like, this cannot annoy you. This is a great way to start the day. Just tranquility,
Mhm.
nostalgia. But where was I? It was yes, your environment.
Mhm.
If you're not happy with your environment, then change your environment. And the words that you use, the narrative that you use, by changing that narrative that you hear all day, every day in your head, if you change the words that you use towards yourself and towards others, you can change your life.
Totally. Mhm. Without a doubt. And it's there, because I think that of the inner world as something that we can hold clutter with. And I think when we can, because I think folks look for things to put on top of the stuff that keeps them stuck. So they keep on putting more and more and more. And I think removing and decluttering space in the mind makes way to throw a party. You can set up for a party, you have more space to throw a party. And that's, and being able to direct, so getting out of unstuck and then going into focusing and celebrating the progress and the wins, then you're able to change the structure and the narrative of your internal dialogue to work more as a place of um, encouragement, yeah, and support rather than resistance and resentment. Yeah, that one flew through me on that one.
With resentment is something that comes up a lot for me, especially around
Mm,
burnout,
mhm,
where um, and recently has come up. Resentment and betrayal are like the the main reasons why people burn out or self sabotage themselves is because you're expending energy into something with a covert expectation that you will get something in return. And if you
yeah.
don't get that in return, then you're going to feel like someone has taken something away from you, even though it was never explicitly promised. But you
Mm,
expected, oh, I was going to get so much more. I put in all these extra hours. I put in so much effort. I poured my heart into something and I got nothing back. I got nothing in return. I should have gotten something. I should have been recognized. I should have been appreciated. I
mhm,
should have been taken care of or supported or liked or been made happy or received something in return,
mhm,
but without communicating what they want. And without having that clarity and having those clear expectations or clearly communicating what they want to be reciprocated with before
mhm,
before overextending themselves, this resentment and betrayal that comes up is uh, it's the precursor to why I'm seeing people burning out. And as soon as you, let's say, highlight for them, since they're like, okay, we need to set a boundary here, and then they're like, oh no, but then I'll never get what I want. But they're still not
mm,
going to. They're not going to. They're not even sure what they do want. They just feel I need to overextend myself in order to get there.
mhm. That's it. Yeah, that that's like yeah. Ooh, now putting that in there. I really liked what you shared about resentment and betrayal being a catalyst to burnout. I wrote that down. I really dig that. And then what was the other thought that popped up there? I think that while that goes once again as soft talk and solid talk is having those ambiguous goals. Because I think that when we have a direction, even if it's within a business that employs us, like let's say you don't run your own thing, you're an employee. I think that without that the direction and clearly stated goals with a timeline preferably, that makes them I think that that decreases the betrayal and the resentment because then it's something that we are working on ourselves towards rather than uh projecting the obligation of receiving rewards to someone else. Like you have to give me that because I did this. It's no, I got to get me that because I did this. And I think that that also ties in with something we were talking about pre-recording was the difference between burnout and inspiration and creativity and not and talking about the things that you love on a regular basis. that's that's due to a lighthouse or a north star or a sense of direction that uh you're you're using as a reference. And I'm saying you, I also this is me projecting myself on this one too. It's using that reference point, using that to ensure in the moment that there is a pat on the back. I think that that's what a direction creates, a lighthouse creates, a North Star creates, is it creates that pat on the back because then it makes it a lot smoother. So it's more encouraging than, ooh, betrayal or resentment. Heavy. Damn.
I liked your lighthouse analogy there because it brought me back to one of the biggest steps I needed to
Pokemon Blue?
change.
Pokemon Blue? No, just joking. I'm just joking. Sorry.
One of the biggest things I had to change was stop being a tugboat and become a lighthouse. So a
Mm,
tugboat has to your so much effort is going into one small tugboat pulling a big ship to try and bring it into the port to avoid the rocks. Whereas being a lighthouse is I'm doing the things in my life that light me up. And I'm sending that signal out to help others broadly. I'm sending out a signal say, hey,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
this is what you need to do to avoid the sharp rocks and find your way safely to harbor.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't feel like I am 100% responsible for every ship to avoid the rocks. I'm going to tell them, look, I'm sending out my signals here. I'm telling you, avoid this area, avoid the sharp rocks here. I'm going to highlight them for you, but it's your responsibility whether you decide to keep on coming and crash into the rocks or not.
Yeah.
It's not my responsibility if you still steer into the rocks. I'm not guiding everyone by hand and expending all my energy, all my fuel, like the
Mm-hmm.
tank and the tugboat. I'm not expending all my fuel just to guide one ship.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm doing the activities in my capacity that light me up, sending it out there, helping as many and giving as much value as I can to other people in my capacity, but trusting in them that they can make their own decision in which way they want to go. Do they want to safely come to the harbor, or are they blindly going towards the rocks anyway? They're seeing my signal going like, oh, that's a nice lighthouse, and straight onto the rocks anyway.
Yeah. Nice. I also I saw it as a pun when you said light me up when we had a lighthouse reference. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I was
That's
getting to
good.
that too, but yeah, it's about doing the activities that light me up. And that's just something that's been happening for me a lot regularly. The things that I'm
Mm-hmm.
passionate about, excited about, the projects I'm involved in, different events, different workshops, working with different people. And I find it's really lighting me up, all of
Mm-hmm.
these different activities. And it, but also because of the work I've done, I know my capacity and how much
Mm-hmm.
effort I can put into each of those activities without burning myself out. And knowing because I have a limited capacity, I can only block certain amounts of energy to give to each of these activities. I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
overextend myself because then I cannot show up for these. But
Mm-hmm.
I know that if I can say, look, I have an hour block to work on this, or I have a 2 hour block where I can really do some deep work on this project, and I'm okay with that. The others are out of sight, out of mind during
Yeah.
that laser focus on one activity. And that's what lights me up. I know my capacity. I know that I'm not a tugboat and guiding each one by the hand to come to me, or I'm guiding each one by the hands to help them on their journey. But I can help many, I can help the masses by saying, this is my capacity. This is the amount of energy I can output today. But I am trusting in you to make that decision for yourself. How you show up. This is how I show up, and how you show up is up to you. You need to take ownership of that decision. Do you want to sail into the rocks, or do you want to be guided safely to the shore or to the harbor?
Totally. I personally love nautical references too. I've used many of them as well, where it's if you can hear some fire alarms in the background, the building's not on fire. It's going somewhere else.
Just check if the floor is warm.
Yeah, exactly.
Then we go.
Put my hand on the handle, like not but the backside. I don't want to burn my hand just in case. Yeah. I think riffing off of what you said about energy and allocating energy, that I think that comes down to having that, well, yeah, that lighthouse. So having that lighthouse makes it a lot easier to know when it is time to conserve and when it is time to push the throttle. I think that that's something that, or at least I think it's something that just simply comes with experience, where if you're if you're training for a marathon, not a sprint, if you're training for a marathon and you do sprint training for a marathon, it's not going to turn out so well. However, it's good to be able to know how to sprint so that you can finish the race strong in a marathon. So yeah, I don't know where it was flowing with that one, but it was just something I wanted to share on that one. I thought.
Yeah, I guess keeping with your nautical references where you're about when to have your foot in the throttle and when to step back, there's there is time for going 100%. There's also time for going 20% and being okay with that.
Mhm.
That the difference again between your sprint and your marathon is that yes, there is a time when you do need to sprint, you need to have the capacity for that intensity, but you also have to think about the long game. You still have to think about the marathon. That how do I conserve my energy? What do I need to do in terms of recovery? And what do I need in terms of being consistent and being able to
Mhm.
endure a long endeavor? I can't be sprinting for, was it? It's like 26 miles. I can't sprint for 26 miles, but I can sprint for the last half mile. I can probably push out that half mile, or I can probably push out the last 200 meters when everyone else is kind of they're I think that's what, like when the adrenaline kicks in, but you're like, no, but
Mhm.
I've done the
Oh
sprint
yeah.
training and everyone else's legs are like jelly and I'm super focused. I've done the training. I've spent the last 25 miles waiting for this moment. Um, but it's about knowing, having that self awareness of yourself, of your own capacity and your energy, and also learning which tools you need at which moment and being
Mhm.
okay with that. You cannot operate at 100% all the time. Some days you'll have 100%, some days you might only have 20, some days you might have less. And it's being okay with those moments and saying, okay, if I gave 20% today, that was 100% of what I was capable of. And that's
Mhm.
okay. Showing up with that self compassion for yourself. And then understanding then, okay, I only had 20% capacity today. What do I need to incorporate in my routine to make sure that I have more than 20% tomorrow? What do I need to do in terms of recovery, in terms of self reflection, rather than just berating yourself and saying, God damn it, Eugene, God damn it, Kyle, why do you only have 20% today? Why didn't I should have stayed and tried to push for that 100 anyway. It's like, I'm going to be the same failure tomorrow. If you talk to
Yeah.
yourself like that, then you're going to stay at 20% and lower for a long time.
Yeah.
And you're going to
Yeah.
hate yourself for it.
If I was saying to myself, bro, sucks to suck, I would on a regular basis, that wouldn't exactly inspire much.
And
Hmm.
that's how a lot of people they berate themselves, but they're very quick to blame other people for their situation then. And so they're like, oh, I
Mhm.
wouldn't be in this situation if it wasn't for the economy or if it wasn't for my boss. And once you have that blame, once you put that blame on someone else and you're not taking that ownership for yourself, once you're stuck in that victim mentality, you're not going to be able to get yourself out of that rut because
Mhm.
you're like, oh, I hate myself for how I'm behaving, or I hate myself for what's happening, but it's out of my control. So I'm not going to do anything
Is
about it.
it?
But and that's exactly the narrative that they give themselves. So,
Mhm.
how would you help someone to get out of that narrative of, oh, I hate myself for sucking all the time, but it's out of my control. It's the way of the world. It's because of who is president. It's because of the way the economy is going. It's because of AI. Let's just blame
Yeah.
AI for
Yeah.
everything. The AI is the
Everything.
reason
Yeah,
my life is falling
exactly.
apart. So what do you feel people need to incorporate or become aware of to bring into their uh, existence in order to get over this mindset or this victim mentality?
Ooh, well, I'll start with how I define the victim mentality as well, because I think that'll be good for context. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait in which a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of other people's actions, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. So the victim mentality requires a projection of blame rather than a reflection of blame. The victor mentality is the character that takes ownership. And so the way I would actually start, I would introduce the frame of who is the person in power. So if someone's projecting to all the things that you listed off, those own that person. those own that person. And so we can step into, because the goal with what I do is to create autonomy, to go from autonomous or dependent dwellers to autonomous action takers. And so when we recognize that I am the catalyst to how my life is right now, because ultimately no one else made my decisions for me. So that could be a place where it could be some, if folks don't have a desire to change, a willingness to explore their curiosity, or they have no desire to leave their comfort zone, then they will resist that frame, because having the victim mentality still serves them in another way. They're receiving something, and it could be praise, it could be benefits, it could be whatever. And unless the individual wants to step out of that, the person has to step into their self-leadership before. No, actually, people people step into self-leadership first, because when we can rule ourselves, then no one else can rule over us. And we are giving our responsibility and our, yeah, or simply our ability. We're allowing someone else to use us as a tool as they wish, or something. AI's directing my behavior. uh, and so someone wants to, okay, so we'll go, someone wants to step out of that, is stepping in out of victim mentality into victor mentality. Victor mentality is self-leadership. And yeah, there's a couple points on that one. I had a couple, like three that were flowing through, and I just didn't want to make sure I was going off track with what you were asking.
Yeah, like I think it comes back to like it when people have that victim mentality, they're giving away ownership to someone else or to something else.
Mhm.
And they feel it's like, oh, it's like, you know what, if I can blame it on my boss has to fix everything for me. I see it
Yes.
a lot of the time in burnout, and people burn out, and they're like, oh, all you have to do is change your job. You just have a bad boss. You just need to get out, get a new job. And next thing they burn out in their next role too, and they're like, oh, it's the system, it's the industry, it's just the way things work. Everyone is all so toxic. Next thing is like, it's not everywhere you go you're going to have a bad boss. It's what's the relationship you have with your work? What's the relationship you have with yourself? And you
Hmm.
won't burn out if you can recognize the early signs. And if you can get into alignment with those early signs and recognize, okay, why does this keep on happening? Why am I stuck in this loop? I left the bad boss. I joined another company, got a massive pay raise, and now I'm going through the same thing again. And if once you realize they like, I've seen so many times just keep on blaming the boss, blaming the system. And next thing it's like, oh, maybe I wasn't cut out to be a doctor. Maybe I wasn't cut out to be a lawyer. I've been doing it for the past 20
Mm.
years. Maybe it's just not for me. It's just the way that the system is nowadays. I might have been a good lawyer 50 years ago. There was no one complaining about burnout 50 years ago. And once they get into that
Facts.
mindset, facts, because yeah, it's like, oh, it just
There's
had
no
a
time
different
to.
name. But like it's when people have that mentality, they're like, you're giving ownership to someone else.
Mhm.
And that means if you're giving someone else ownership, you're giving them control over how you live your life. And you're going to be stuck in that loop until you take ownership that you need to change how you're living your life if you want to live a different way. If you give someone else ownership over how you spend your day, or if you don't take that ownership for yourself, someone else is going to decide it for you. If you don't decide your plans for your life, someone else is going to hand you a plan. They're going to hand you a path. And they're going to say, okay, well, if you can't make a decision for yourself, take this job, take this role, stay in that for 50 years and see how you feel. And you have the option to change whenever you want. It's going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be raw, and it's definitely going to be a lot more difficult if you don't know what you're doing. but the option is there. And a lot of people just stick in that path. They're miserable, but they're like, it is what it is. Can't change the system. System is against me. World is against me. It is what it is. And this is the way I'm going to live my life. I'm not happy about it, but it is what it is. And it's that defeatist victim mentality that holds a lot of people back. And they try to run away from it. They try to numb it. They try to escape from it rather than addressing it and being like, oh, life could be a lot easier if I didn't do A, B, and C.
Mhm. Something that an image that popped up, and you're gonna freaking dig it. The image that came up was the way that you're describing it. Metapod came to my mind. And then as you were talking about a whole bunch of people, I'm just imagining all these metapods, which metapod is the evolution to butter free, right? Freedom rather than butter slave. Nah, that doesn't make sense. But yeah, it's there's folks that want to be metapods, and there's folks that are going to want to be better frees. And when we take our own goals, our own language, our dialogue, we take responsibility and we enjoy that responsibility. I think that that's a thing too, is that responsibility is discouraged in a way. I think, or maybe not discouraged. It would be responsibility is, I I'm thinking of this on the fly, where we are could be built up. Let's say, for example, we're constructing a society where it's fear is the predominant thing, because when people are fearful, they're less likely to rebel. And if there's more butterfrees, then that that counters that fear. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where I'm flowing with that one. There's a point of responsibility. I think it has a negative narrative. Taking responsibility is often, I think, usually in heavy motivational stuff, like you gotta take responsibility for your life. You gotta take. So I don't think that folks are as inclined to it, as well as I think self-leadership and autonomy is also discouraged too, or it hasn't been presented as an opportunity yet for someone. Mhm.
When I first started out my journey and started talking about my mental health, I got a lot of negative backlash about it. That people are like, oh, we don't talk about that around here. If you want to keep your job, you might want to, stop being so outspoken about this. Oh, talking about your mental health is career suicide. You know that, don't you? Oh, you know what? If you just take all of this down, and keep your head low, lay low for a few weeks, people will forget all about it. And that was supposed to shut me up. If anything, it was like, as soon as people said, oh, we don't talk about that around here, I was like, okay, sounds like we need to talk more about it.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, they were trying to shut me up. If anything, it said, I need to normalize this conversation so people don't feel so uncomfortable talking about these things. And one of the big things that came up for me there was especially what I love especially about your Metapod Butterfree analogy as well is Metapod's solo move was Harden. He was on the defensive, and there was no attack move for Metapod unless you evolved him from Caterpie. If you caught a Metapod in the wild, his only move was Harden. So it can be very hard to break out of that shell. Very hard for a Metapod to break out of that chrysalis and become a Butterfree if his only move is Harden. There's no way of him fighting back. So if you want to avoid becoming a level 100 Metapod with no chance of evolving, what's the
Yeah.
best way to get in touch with you, Kyle, so that people can break out of their chrysalis Metapod and become the shiny Butterfree they could be?
Oh
What's
man.
the shiny rate for a Butterfree? have to look into that. But you won't know. You won't know if you're going to become a shiny Butterfree if you don't know how to break out of your Metapod.
Mm, yeah, and then learn the skill loosen up rather than harden. Oh, that's cool. Where to find me? Uh, if you want to learn about my work, more about myself, clarityconsultant.ca. That's where you can find everything. And then if you want to have a conversation with me, Instagram's the easiest one, and all my social handles are the same. It's Dapperdude Kyle, DAPPERDUDEKYLE. And that's that.